Another example on how to find the output of a program that involves objects and classes. Let us have a quick look into the class definition. The class name is variable. It has three data members. The first two are static integers, both initialized to 0. The third data member is an instance variable. It is non-static and it is an integer and it is not initially initialized by the programmer. So therefore, when an object is created from this class, the system will automatically give it a default value, which is 0. The class also has a constructor that receives one input parameter as integer. It saves this input parameter to the instance variable value. At the same time, increments the static variable NB variables by 1. Also, the class has a method called increment that increments the static variable count by 1. The last three methods, they are getting values. The first one is getting the value for NB variables. The second is getting the value for the instance variable value. And the third one is getting the value of the static variable count. Before we start the tracing, since we have two static variables, then first draw a box and put the values of these static variables inside it. This is the first statement in our program. It simply creates an object from the class variable by calling its constructor with an input parameter equals to 5. The constructor will save 5 into value, the instance variable, and at the same time it will increment NB variables by 1, which is the static variable. So NB variables will change from 0 to 1, and a new object will be created with an instance variable value equal to 5. To represent this change, you draw a box for object 1 and you put the value of the instance variable inside it, and you make this object points to the static variables count and NB variables. Notice that the value for NB variables was 0. Now it is updated to 1. The next statement also creates an object from the class variable by calling its constructor with an input parameter equals to 9. The constructor will save 9 into the instance variable value, and it will increment NB variables by 1. So NB variables will change to 2, and at the same time a new object will be created with instance variable value equal to 9. To represent this change, you draw another box that represents the state of the second object, and you put the value of its instance variable inside it, which is equal to 9, and you make it points to the static variables, indicating that they are shared by this object. Notice that NB variables is updated. It was 1, now it is equal to 2. The next statement also creates an object, but this time the input parameter to the constructor is equal to 20. So therefore, we will draw another object by a box, and we write the instance variable inside it equal to 20 because the input parameter to the constructor was 20. At the same time, you update the value of NB variables to 3 because when you created the object, its constructor updated NB variables. Now this is the state of the three objects, and now simply you can trace your program by following their corresponding methods. The following statement is calling the increment method of object 1, and increment method simply increment the static variable by 1. So you cross out 0 and you simply write 1 in place of it. In the following statement, we are calling again the increment method, but this time for object 2. So again, it will increment the static variable by 1. So it is now equal to 1. So when we call this method, it will increase the value of count by 2. The next statement is a print statement, but we have a call get variable for object 2. So we are again talking about object 2. So this is the definition for the method get variable. It returns the value of n variables. And since n variables, the current value is 3, so this method will return 3 to the print statement, and the print statement will print it on the screen. The next statement is similar to the previous one, but this time we are calling the method getValue for object 3. And inside getValue, the method retains the value of the instance variable. And the value for the instance variable for object 3 is equal to 20. So therefore, a print will print 20 on the screen. Again, we are calling the increment method for object 3, and it will increment count by 1. Then the value of count will be updated. You simply cross out 2 and you put 3 for count. Finally, we are calling the method getCount for object 3. This is the definition for getCount. It retains the value of count, and the value of count simply is equal to 3. So what will be printed on the screen? It will print the value 3. That completes the trace of our program, and the output is in the first line 3, in the second line 20, in the third line 3. Let us quickly trace the program in JGrasp using the canvas. In JGrasp, I have arranged two windows, one for the class and the other one for testing the class. On the left-hand side is the main program, and on the right-hand side we have the class definition for variable. Now we run the canvas by clicking the canvas icon, and then the canvas will appear to us where we will keep tracing the current values of each object and any other variables in this area. It has controls in here. This is for stepping next step. This is for stepping step by step, and this is for stepping in. So if we want to go inside the class, then we have to press this icon rather than this one. This one will skip calling a method and going inside. For example, now I am here in line number 4. Now, if this line will create an object from the class. Now, if I press this arrow, the down arrow, then it will not show me that it is going inside the class, calling the constructor, and then coming back. It will do it fast and just go to the next line, which is line number 5. But if I press this icon, that means I need to go inside, and I want JGrasp to show me how the constructor is running. So let us do that. So I will press this icon. So see, we have jumped inside the class. Since it has static variables, first it will initialize these variables one by one, and then it will go inside the constructor. See, now we are inside the constructor. In the constructor, it has passed a new value, and if I want to see what is this parameter, go to the left-hand side and you will see it here. See, the value of the parameter is 5. Let's come back. So what this constructor will do, now you can step to the next step by clicking any of these two icons. So first it will move a new value to value, and then it will increment the static variable NB variables by 1. After it returns back, see, we are returning back. Now a new object is created called object1, and you can see its reference on the left-hand side. Now I need to keep a trace of the object and also the static variables in the canvas, so I have to drop them in the canvas. Let us go to the left-hand side for the object. First, I will drag the whole object and drop it into the canvas. See, now it is showing me a box and the instance variable inside it, which is equal to 5. And now if I want to see the values for the static variables, notice that JGrasp did not include them inside the box because they are shared. So how can I bring them out? You go to the left-hand side, you click a plus in the front of the object, you will see the contents, you drag the variable count, and also you drag the variable NB variables. Now these are the values for the two static variables. So in line number 5, this is the status of our program. And notice that NB variables, which stands for number variables, has increased by 1 because the constructor increased it by 1. Let us go now to the next step. So we are creating another object, object2, and the input parameter is 9. We will go inside the constructor, step in. We have jumped into the constructor, and if I want to see the input parameter that's coming from the main program, go to the left-hand side, see the new value is 9. So that means the constructor will move 9 into value. Also, it will increment the static variable by 1. So the static variable now is 1. When you execute this statement, it has increased to 2. When we return back to our main program, a new object has been created, object 2. If I want to see its status, simply drag it. And this is the status for object 2, the instance variable inside equal to 9. When we go to line number 6, we are also creating another object. Let us step into the constructor. If I want to see the input parameter, again, go to the left-hand side, see it is a 20. So the constructor will move 20 into value and will increment NB variables by 1, and it will add 1 to the current value and becomes 3. When we return back, a new object has been created. Now, if I want to see the status of this object, I simply drop it into the canvas. So now we have 3 objects. All of them share the 2 static variables, count and NB variables. The current value for count is 0. The current value of number of variables, NB variables, is 3. And the instance variables for each object indicated inside the box. In line number 9, we are calling the increment method for object 1. So what this increment method will do, we step into the method. See, we have jumped inside the class. It is increasing count by 1. Now, count is a static variable. Its current value is 0. So when we execute count to plus, it will increase it to 1. When we return back, we are calling increment now for object 2. Again, it will increment count by 1 because count is shared, and the value of count becomes 2. When we jump to the next statement, in the next statement in line 12, we have a print. And also we have a call of a method getVariable for object 2. This is object 2. So when we jump into the method, see it is returning the value of NB variables. And the value of NB variables is 3. So this method will return 3. And print will take it and print it on the screen. Let us see the output screen. Now this is the output screen. It is equal to 3. Again, in line 13, we are calling a method called getValue, but this is for object 3. Let us see what this method will do. We will step into it and see we are now inside the method. It will return the value of the instance variable value. Since we are calling the method on object 3, so it will return 20 because the value of value instance variable is 20. When this value is returned to print statement, then the print statement will print it on the screen. Notice it is printed 20 in the output screen. In line 15, we are calling increment for object 3. So we will jump into the method increment, but this is for object 3. It will increase count by 1. Count is shared. It will change from 2 to 3. And when we return back, the print statement will call another method for object 3 called getCount. And when we jump into it, so we are jumping into the method getCount for object 3. This is object 3. It is returning the value of count. And count is shared, so it will return 3 to print, and the print, let us go to the next statement, and as you see that the print will print its value, which is equal to 3.